Yeah. So anyway, that's just what I've seen. So yeah.
By the way, the primary publishing place for the podcast, is it on the devchat.tv website? Is it on other
Yeah.
platforms? How does it work usually?
So yeah, we publish it on we rebranded top or devchat.tv to topenddevs.com.
Uh, okay.
So it goes there, and then yeah, people get it in their podcast app and stuff like that. So
Usually, how long does it take from the recording to publishing?
a couple weeks. Yeah. So yeah, we're a little bit ahead, so that kind of works out. All right. Well, I'm not very patient, so I'm going to get us started.
Don't worry. Maybe they
All right,
jump
here
in.
goes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to just introduce the show and then introduce you, and then we'll go from there.
sure.
All right. Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week, I'm your host, Charles Max Wood, and we have a special guest. It's Fabio Akita. Fabio, do you want to tell people how awesome you are and remind them why we like you?
Yeah, thank you for having me again. I think it's my third time maybe in the
Mm-hmm.
show. So if you heard, we talked about Crystal and Elixir like 5 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, and from there I started a YouTube channel called Akitando here in Brazil. It's an all Portuguese
Mm-hmm.
web YouTube channel devoted to programming techniques, the foundations of programming, and from at the same time, I still have my company, which is called Miner 42. It's a software development boutique here in Brazil. We work primarily for US companies. We have like 80 developers working full time in several projects coast to coast, the US. And many people from the old days could probably remember me from the RubyConf Brazil events
Mm-hmm.
as well. I was the former organizer of the event until 2016, I think. So I've been around for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how I know you. I think we've bumped into each other at conferences or I've seen you speak at different events and things like that. And so yeah, it's fun to just kind of catch up. And I sent you a message on LinkedIn last week, and we chatted for a little bit. And so yeah, anyway, just great stuff. And we were talking about your YouTube channel, and I was like, that's cool. We should just get on and talk about some of the things you were talking about on the channel. Um, and then I'm always interested in the content game, right? So how does that work? How many people did you have listening or watching and all that stuff? So do you want to just explain briefly what the channel was about? And then we can kind of
Sure.
dive into some of the specifics.
Absolutely. So I was generating content from a very long time. Actually, my blog, I was just checking the first blog post I ever did. It was it's gonna make 18 years next week, next Friday, actually on April 5, the 5th. So
Mm-hmm.
it's my here in Brazil, my blog would be old enough to drink already. So it's been
Nice.
a long time. And I've been doing the blog stuff. I've been doing, as you said, the participating in events, doing as a speaker. So I here in Brazil, I've been traveling around across the country for many years. So I did like more than 200 speeches here in several different locations. And after that, I had the conference, and because of all that content generation stuff, that I thought the next step could be trying the video stuff and see how
Mm-hmm.
YouTube actually works, and if it would be any interesting for me to generate content on that. So I didn't have an exact goal in mind, but I had some principles that I wanted to follow. For example, it was early on, I had in my mind that I wouldn't want my channel to be monetized in terms of having sponsorships or selling products, selling courses. Particularly because one of the reasons I started the channel was a reaction to the whole boom of online courses, especially here in Brazil, where we had so much demand, so much the demand was so high for online courses that many of them were borderline frauds and they were
Oh
ripping
man.
people off. Yeah. So like pay us in advance. You're gonna have 12 months of great courses, and then people jump in and they see that it's like they were copying content from other places, like other
Oh
YouTube
wow.
channels and stuff like that. So it was really bad, and it was creating a really bad reputation among people that actually wanted to teach about programming. So how do
Hmm.
you separate who's good, who's not good? And many started to see the teaching community here in Brazil as at the same level as cryptocurrency coaches and stuff like that. So I wanted to create a YouTube channel that primarily focused on not teaching in terms of the classical step-by-step procedural procedure, but more on terms of what is computer science, why
Hmm.
all those boring subjects are actually interesting, stuff that people don't really get in the first couple of years in college, uh, like algorithms, like calculus, like
Right.
all the boring stuff that is not creating React JS components. So I
Right.
wanted to do all that stuff at the same time, explaining more about what the market is, how the careers work, how even a little bit of how financial markets work, because the IT market is a part of the bigger scale
Hmm.
financial markets and all the bubbles and all the hypes, why we
Right.
have bubble cycles, what's going on. So really get a grasp of the larger picture, let's put it that way, while at the same time diving deeper than most online courses in terms of explaining how computers work, what is, for example, what is low level coding, what is machine code,
Hmm.
and how does that progress into uh, larger languages or higher level languages, even getting as far as explaining uh, what is optimization, what is performance,
Right.
what is relevancy, how do you calculate relevancy, how is Google able to provide you everything you want to know in the first couple pages of the search results. So all of that stuff I wanted to explain in a real deep way. So many of my videos are more than an hour long. So I had like
Mm.
in 5 years I produced 150 videos, give or
Oh
take,
wow.
and most of them are on the range of an hour, a couple of them an hour and a half. I actually started the channel without knowing the exact structure, so I shot at two videos every week of 15 to 20 minutes. Then
Hmm.
I started consolidating to one video a week of half an hour long, then a video every 2 weeks of an hour long, and that format stayed for 3 to 4 years. And I the what I wanted to do was to not only explain all of that, but also mix with my own experience
Mm.
in the working as a proper programmer, engineer, architect through the last 30 years. So my career starts in the early 90s, and I think I had enough experience to explain what happens in your whole career, starting from college all the way to becoming an entrepreneur, content generator. Because another frustration that I had was many people starting those online courses didn't even have like 5 years working properly
Right.
as a programmer, and they were explaining, "Oh, I'll teach you advanced stuff that Google wants." So I'm saying, "No, you won't," and I'll
Yeah.
explain why.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I think that was the gist of it.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, just talking a little bit about, how some of this goes together. I mean, we've been producing Ruby Rogue since what, 2011. So, we're almost to 13 years here. And yeah, it's interesting to see where people find the value, right? And that level of experience. We've had a number of just highly experienced people as hosts on the show, and it makes a huge difference. And you can figure out pretty quickly whether or not somebody's the real deal or not. So, and I think that's important. Um, the whole course thing kind of, well, not kind of, it really bothers me. Um, but I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say about it than what you said. Um, if you're going to promise somebody something, deliver it. Um, but yeah, so let's dive into some of the aspects of um, algorithms and career decisions and things like that. Because what I find is I'm talking to a lot of people who are at a crossroads at their, where they're working, right? And so for some people, it's, hey, I'm new or newish, trying to decide what to learn, which direction to go, what technologies to use, things like that. And then the other group that I seem to be talking to quite a bit more these days is people who have been laid off, right? And so, hey, I've been programming in Rails for, umpteen years, and um, I'm having trouble finding a job, and you know, first of all, they're not understanding the economic forces at work that kind of put us in this position, but then also, you just what do I do about it? So let's kind of take these in reverse order. For the people who are out of work, right? I actually did a Twitter space this morning and talked to some folks about who were, between jobs, about what they were doing, and it's tough out there. It's really tough. So if you're sitting there between jobs, maybe you're a Ruby or Rails developer, what do you recommend people do?
Yeah, so this is a question that many people having everywhere, not only in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
here in Brazil as
Right.
well. We had our fair share of big layoffs as well in the
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah. So a lot of people are struggling to find good good jobs nowadays. So and that was another pillar of my channel. My channel started in August of 2018. So since
Mm-hmm.
2018, I was already because I'm not only a programmer, not only a company owner, entrepreneur. I also invest in the financial market. So full disclosure that I am an investor
Mm-hmm.
in the stock market as well. And I was the way I see how we got here is in 2008 we had that big
Right.
economic
The housing
crash,
bubble.
the
Yeah.
housing bubble. It was a disaster. People were foreseeing the end of times and stuff like that, and we were able to jump back in. And actually, the decade that followed 2008 was possibly the best decade that the technology market has ever seen. So
Mm-hmm.
not only we had a fast recovery, but we also had big breakthroughs. For example, it was in 2008 2009 that the whole mobile ecosystem was actually
Mm-hmm.
built. We had the launch of the app store, then we had the big apps such as Uber, Airbnb, and all of those actually started around that time. And the demand for technology grew very fast, and many considered programming as the kind of like a savior, more or less, to that financial crisis, and
Mm-hmm.
going back up, creating new opportunities, new markets that never existed before. For example, for people that could now work for making deliveries for DoorDash, or
Right.
renting their their houses, apartments at Airbnb and stuff like that. So created a whole new market for many people, not only in the programming space, but the ecosystem as a whole. So 2014, I think it was the peak where the awareness of programming caught up to the mainstream. Many
Hmm.
people was wondering what the hell is this programming thing that I'm hearing about all the time. New millionaires, new billionaires coming out of
Hmm.
nowhere. So everybody wanted to jump in this bandwagon. That's when we start to see the rise of the boom of online courses, coaches, uh,
Hmm.
workshops, whatever, uh, trying to sell to a whole new generation about this gold mine called programming. So many
Right.
people that wouldn't consider programming as their first option started to jump into this market, and the whole marketing approach that I think was very wrong was that, oh, programming is too easy, anyone can do it. If you just copy and paste and follow these simple steps, you can build things that Google wants, and they will hire you for whatever whatever you want as your payment, and it's gonna work. So
Right.
we more than that, we, because of the financial crash and the way the governments and the Fed, for example, they tackle that problem. So interest rates went to all-time lows. That
Yep.
meant that many most of the money that would be on treasury bonds started to flood the markets. So now we have
Hmm.
liquidity for lots of investments in very dubious
Right.
entrepreneurships. And it was exactly like in the year 2000 with the internet bubble. We saw that if you were a programmer back in those days, I saw that in the year 2000. I saw that in 2010 as well. So it was the same. It was the same motivation. It was the same hype. It was like, but much bigger this time. And because of that, I think 2018 I was starting to see cracks in that model.
Hmm.
It couldn't last forever. You can't just generate an army of people that knows not a lot more than copy and pasting things into a text editor and calling it programming. So there's a limit to where you can go, and the limit came, and I think the whole, then we had the pandemic, and the pandemic, instead of popping that bubble, it actually expanded it. People doubled down
Right.
on technology during the pandemic because people are staying at home. Now more than ever, apps and technology were again the safe haven. So people were staying at home, receiving deliveries through DoorDash, buying through Amazon, watching Netflix, doing work using Zoom calls, and all those startups, they doubled in price, and they,
Right.
the demand for that was so big that they doubled the amount of people they were hiring. So from 2021 to 2022, many of those tech companies doubled their headcount. So it was
Right.
crazy like that. But then we had the big crash. Inflation came in, interest rates went up. So now liquidity was out.
Right.
There were no more liquidity in the market. And how most of those tech startups, they didn't have any profit. They were depending on the next round of investment that never
Hmm.
came. So now we are entering 2022, and most of those companies were having to do big mass layoffs, and now we have dozens of thousands of people without a job, and they were all I wouldn't say they were fooled. I think many of those people, they knew what they were getting into, but they had that mindset that was, yeah, I think the future is going to be that easy, and that's
Hmm.
fine. I don't need to invest more than that because I get a paid I have a job and it pays me well, until it doesn't. And
Right.
most of those people, they don't care a lot about how the money comes in. They just assume that it's a thing that happens. They don't think about, oh, does my employer actually has any profits? Does my work has any
Right.
value? So they don't make those reflections on their actual work. And sooner or later, bubbles like that explode. In 2022, I think it was the last drop in the bucket, and it came crashing down. It's still not a crash like it was in the year 2000, 2001.
Right.
It's not close to that, because we're still many of those companies are still not profitable, but they still have investment, they still have some hype. So
Hmm.
this market is still going, particularly in the AI space now, because of what we had with ChatGPT and NVIDIA and
Right.
stuff like that. So most of those investments are moving towards companies like Snowflake and other tech startups that are focused on that. And now those, we can talk about that later, but that's a new bubble. But the web development and mobile apps development bubble kind of crashed it down and corrected a little bit. Still not as bad as one could have predicted, but because of that, I think we now have this situation where competition is more difficult. It's more difficult to find good jobs. The demands are more. People are expecting more of the programmers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, and I think you explained it really well. Where do we go from here? I mean, and not just as a community, but I mean, I'm talking to some people that are, I mean, they're really scared, really worried, right? They don't know where to go next. And yeah, so what do they do?
Yeah. So the other thing is, during that exuberance phase where most tech companies had all the money they wanted, the technology kind of reflect that reality as well. So from 2000, I'd say 2012 until 2018, more or less, something like that, we had a lot of new, for example, web frameworks doing exactly the same thing. Just they were just reinventing the wheel all the time, especially in the front end space.
Hmm.
So you had, like, from React all the way to Svelte, going through TypeScript, new Angular, whatever. So it was a lot of effort that was wasted. It was a big, it was one of the biggest waste of times I've ever seen in the programming world, because we were just discussing the uh, at the end of the day, we were just discussing how do I change the color of the button all over again. So it was the same thing. It was the
Little
same
bike
thing.
shedding going on, huh?
Yeah, a lot of bike shedding, a lot. I'd say 90% of all the discussions that we had in the past 10 years in the front end space were big bike sheds. Of course, we had good evolutions, but it was incremental
Mhm.
evolutions. Not we didn't. It took 10 years, and we're still discussing the same CSS
Right.
problems and stuff like that. So we didn't fix anything. We just made it more complicated. And
Right.
we could afford having more complicated, because we had an army of people that we could use just to actually change the color of them buttons, for example. But now the discussion, it shifts to efficiency. So again,
Right.
when we are closer to a recession where money is not easy anymore, where you don't have free lunch, you actually have to start thinking, how do I properly invest this revenue money that I just got? I can't just go spending whatever. So
Hmm.
efficiency becomes the new priority. And efficiency is not something that you just learn through a course. There's no courses online that I'm going to teach you efficiency in 10 easy steps. That's not how it works. Productivity, efficiency, stuff like that. So only people that actually invested the time to learn the foundational stuff can understand optimization, for example, can understand what to cut and still get good results, what not what to add but what to cut off and
Hmm.
make a bigger difference. I usually I spend a lot of years saying that the best code a programming can do is zero code, because you're not adding new bugs, you're not adding maintenance, you're not adding a lot of stuff that is actually cost and not but most of the beginner programmers, they think that adding stuff is actually the same as adding value, but that's not the same. And that distinction only comes with a lot of practice, a lot of
Hmm.
study, a lot of patience, actually caring about your craft to know what to do at this time. And in this kind of market, the market's gonna is gonna reward people that knows the craft properly and can deliver actual value instead of just bike shedding.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot that you said here, and I'm going to try and summarize it so I can ask the next question. But effectively, what you're saying is that so these companies, they just had all this money, so they just poured money into things that they didn't even necessarily need to measure as far as its effectiveness for what they were doing, and you know, that's the example is changing the color of the button, but it could be any number of things, right? And
Yeah.
so now what we're getting down to is, now that money's less easy to come by, that's what you were talking about earlier with the liquidity and the ability of these companies to raise money, whether it's through investment or other means. Um, they're now letting people go because that money has to go further, so it actually has to matter more what they're working on. And so they can't bike shed over, do we use the next greatest React blah blah blah, unless it's going to help us achieve these outcomes and do some kind of work for us. So the question I asked was, what do Ruby on Rails developers do if they're one of those people that got laid off? And it seems like the implication is learn how to be able to bring that value to what you're doing, right? So you need to be able to demonstrate that you can do more than bike shed over um, what tool to use or what hosting to put it on or things like that, and actually identify areas in the code base where adding code adds value, or where removing code adds value, or where there may be a better solution than sort of the obvious thing you would reach for. Am I reading that right? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yes. For us, the Ruby on Rails community, I think this is again a good timing. And Ruby on Rails is still one of the only, if not the only, web framework that works top to bottom from front end to back end. It's an entire solution,
Hmm.
instead of just having pieces and that I have to search myself and try to weave together in some
Right.
jerry-rigged way. So I think Ruby on Rails is still the most cohesive web frameworks out there. And DHH has been focusing on bringing on trying to get rid of all that complexity, especially on the front end
Right.
side, the JavaScript side. It of course is controversial. Of course, there's lots of things that we don't agree.
Well,
But in terms
yeah.
of the general vision, I think it's correct in terms of simplifying that, getting rid of all the bike shedding discussions, and making possible again to be a full um, a full not only just a front end developer, not only a back end developer, but a full stack developer. I think that term is going to come back again, because it was impossible to be a
Hmm.
full stack developer, because only in the front end side you had to know like 12 different web frameworks and a combination of like 30 other
Yeah.
node
Build
packages that you
tools and yeah.
yeah, it was a matrix of
Yeah.
stuff that you needed to know. It was impossible. What CSS framework should I use? Tailwind, uh, whatever, Bootstrap again. I don't
Bootstrap.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was crazy. It's still crazy, and I think we are going to. I hope we're going to see a more focused effort on things that actually work instead of trying trying to discuss a new re-implementation, a new Svelte, a new React again and again and
Right.
again, instead of getting stuff done. And in the idea of getting stuff done, again we go back to the roots of the agile movement. The agile movement itself kind of died 10 years ago because of that situation. So in terms of discussing things that doesn't add value, people are discussing, uh, they were thinking that efficiency was having a report where I estimated 10 points whatever and I delivered 10 points. Wow,
Hmm.
we're efficient. But that's not efficiency. Efficiency is actual value, not trying to fit useless metrics into a report and calling
Hmm.
that efficiency. So I think all of those things are coming into discussion. And again, because we need to get rid of all of that and start getting things done, which ironically is the first 37 Signals book, getting real to get things
Hmm.
done properly. And maybe we're going back to that. And if we are, Ruby on Rails is in the best position to be, again, the one that starts to deliver value faster, with more quality, with maintainability in mind, because we had all those agile principles imbued into the web framework. We never opted out of
Hmm.
testing, for example, because no one needs to test, because we have an army of people that can do manual testing. So many companies were doing that. They were
Yeah.
calling that QA. They had like 100 people just to start clicking things, because the developers were too important to waste time doing unit tests or automated testing. So oh, uh,
Yeah.
and that's a thing that actually happened. I saw companies that were mandating no testing code because we have a QA department or company that's
Yeah.
responsible for that, and developers are in short supply. We don't want them doing testing stuff. We need them coding new features, whatever they are, and churn code as fast as possible. And that was the mindset a couple years ago. And I think now we're going to go back to developers that can deliver features that work with minimal bugs, with test coverage,
Hmm.
with proper designs in mind, with proper principles in mind. So all of that becomes the new priority. And when we say that the bubble crash, that we are coming to a recession, layoffs, stuff like that, it feels doom and gloomy. But actually, that's an opportunity, because anyone that can leverage that position out of creating companies or creating tools or creating whatever that adds value, that brings back productivity, efficiency, profit, and stuff like that, they're going to be better positioned to surf the next wave, whatever that is,
Right.
because that there's going to be a next wave. I don't know if it's AI, if it's whatever, but if you have that mindset instead of the let's waste time with whatever, you're going to be better positioned to conquer that new wave, whatever that is.
Right. So, um, I'm just going to make it really simple then. Are you telling the Ruby people to just hang in there, or are there other concrete steps that they can take to position themselves for what's coming?
Yeah, I think the Ruby community, the original mindset of the Ruby community shifted because of that period of time that people were not paying attention to quality anymore, to efficiency.
Hmm.
So it was not, Ruby on Rails was not a great framework in that scenario, because I can do microservices in Go, I can rewrite stuff in Rust, I can rewrite my front end 10 times in 10 different web frameworks, and Ruby on
I've heard
Rails
this, all of these things, so many times.
so many times. So I think most true Rails developers were disheartened to not be able to participate in that bigger discussion because Ruby on Rails was not sexy enough, because it was too
Hmm.
efficient, it was too easy, it was not flashy enough, it was not wasting time. So we needed to waste more time to be flashy, and I waste more resources. Why be efficient if we have money to spare? But now that we don't, that's, I think, the message is all of the principles that Rails are built upon, built over. I think those are now the new priorities, and I think one can be more motivated to learn more about how Rails works, how the ecosystem works, how we did things back in 2008 when we launched stuff that was influential, like GitHub, for example.
Hmm.
Every CI platform that we know was basically made with Ruby on Rails. So we built all the proper tools that people dismissed for 10 years, and now they're again important. So I think anyone that's beginning in the Ruby community should learn the proper values, what quality is, what proper coding is, and not try to jump into whatever new hype comes up just because it's new. But Ruby on Rails now is not the new kid on the block, but I think it still holds as one of the bastions of the best practices that I hope are going to start to be more valid in companies again.
Makes sense. So I'm hearing that you think that Ruby and Ruby on Rails is a good longer term bet. Um, so yeah, so where are things going to go from here, right? I mean, if I'm betting on Ruby on Rails, I know some people have to go find work now and they maybe not be able to find the Rails jobs, right? Because some of them went away. Um, so should they be picking up things like AI or?
Yeah, and that's another question that I hear often. What should I start learning, or what books should I read, or what courses should
Yeah,
I do? Because uh, it's urgent. I don't have time to waste, and I need a new gig right now. What should I
right.
do? And that's the, unfortunately, if I had that answer, I would be selling it for $1 million because no one has it. But
Right.
let me try to share what I think about it. Of course, this is really just my opinion, and there is no proper way. I think most people they they are so insecure in feeling that they are not able to decide that they try to hear someone like me, someone like you, all the other influencers asking them for that kind of answer. And there is no answer. None of us can give an answer to everybody because
Hmm.
each person's condition is situation is going to be very, very different. Maybe you are a father that has to provide for your family, 3 kids.
Right.
Maybe you're someone that is not married, you live with your parents, you're a freelancer, whatever. Maybe you have, I don't know, loans to pay. And you have hundred thousands of different situations, and there is no one answer that's gonna be good for everybody. So in terms of principles, yes, you should start learning, if you don't know already, something that's very practical, something that can be used
Hmm.
in a couple months. You're going to be productive in something. There's a big list of stuff that you should probably know: web frameworks,
Right.
DevOps tools, all of the traditional things that most online courses already have. You should start learning some of that. It's going to take you, I don't know, 6 months, maybe a year. It feels like a long time, but that's not a long time. It's a very short window, and try to find your next gig, your next job, whatever that is. If you are able to jump into a new job, then you use that time to not only get better at that at those specific tasks, but also trying to experiment with new stuff that are not going to be used in the your current job. So be it AI, be it content generation, be it social network stuff. I don't know, something that feels like a hobby, but you actually have to study a little bit more. And again, there's no course on that. Maybe you like cryptocurrencies, maybe you like the new crop of AI tools. I don't know.
Hmm.
You can start reading books. There's no one single book, there's no one single course that's going to teach you all you need to know. So you're going to have to do experimentation. And this is the part that I think most people are afraid of. When I say experimentation, it's exactly as the word implies. You have to learn by trial and error. You're not going to be able to target a specific learning program that's going to be 100% correct, and you're not going to waste any time. That's not going to happen. uh, Actually, most of the learning is going to come from stuff that you do wrong instead of
Hmm.
stuff that you think is right. uh, I think the learning process is more productive when you're not afraid to make mistakes, because the mistakes are the stuff that uh, make you actually mature and grow. If you're not making mistakes, you're not actually learning anything. It's impossible to just learn by reading a book and not actually trying to do something. You have to accept that you're going to make mistakes. It's going to feel like you're wasting time, and that's part of the learning process, and you have to accept that. The sooner one accepts that, I think the faster they're gonna learn new stuff.
Yep. Cool. You talked a little bit about if you're new to Ruby, you need to learn these ideas and principles that were in vogue and important to learn 10 years ago. Can you kind of, and you've talked about some of those as we've gone along. But what are those ideas that get you from, bike shedding to being a contributor that actually brings real value?
Sure. So I think one of the first mistakes that beginners do is they think of languages or web frameworks or tools like sports teams. So they cheer for that team. They feel like
Hmm.
they have to be loyal to that team. Some people actually tattoo the languages or frameworks, whatever, permanently, because they feel like they own something. They owe something to those technologies. But technologies, at the end of the day, they're just simple tools. They're not different from hammers or screwdrivers. You're not gonna see.
Hmm.
I don't think someone's gonna tattoo a hammer just because it's your job to use a hammer. And
Right.
yeah, that would be silly, and it is silly to be loyal to a language. Even though I
Hmm.
love Ruby on Rails, I'm not loyal to it in terms of I'm gonna all my decisions are gonna be live or die by Ruby. So it's not gonna be
Hmm.
that. Uh, Languages to technologies are every technology is a tool. It doesn't matter, for example, if I like or dislike, I don't know, cryptocurrencies, let's say. So that's something that's controversial. I don't need to like Bitcoin to actually learn the algorithms behind it. There's a lot of interesting stuff that many people
Right.
don't even realize. For example, in terms of Byzantine consensus, that's the same algorithm that we use for distributed systems to actually have coherence in their communications. So you have to have some kind of consensus, and Bitcoin is one. Maybe if you like that theme, you should use that to learn the underlying technologies behind it, the blockchain. It's basically learning to use hashing. If you don't know hashing, you don't know cryptography. You need to know something like that. If you don't know hashing, you don't know what it means if a data is corrupt or not. You don't know how to index it. You don't know how to
Right.
find that data in a bigger data set. So you have to learn the basics. And if you can use something that a theme that you like to use and use it to learn the underlying technology, the better, because it's more practical than actually opening a cryptography book, going to the hashing chapter, and trying to memorize what hashing means without a practical usage for that. So I think you should start at something practical and trying to go deep in the underlying foundations that make that thing work. Once you understand what makes that work, you can apply it to other stuff. Then comes the creative part, the experimental part. Could I use this technology to this other thing? And then you start to see, for example, the AI stuff. GPUs were made for graphical stuff. It was made for CGI. It was made for games. Someone along during the evolution of GPUs thought, oh, maybe I can use that to process large data sets and do something with that, because images are basically matrices of data. Artificial intelligence deals with matrices of data. Maybe I can use the same hardware, and boom, then you now have the NVIDIA the NVIDIA market going up like crazy nowadays. So, but you never know. Someone had to try that 10 years ago to figure that out and make that work. No one knew it could work. It was an experimental work. Not everybody can do that kind of experimentation, but it's not as rocket sciencey as most people think. It's basically someone with a terminal open doing random code, and some of that actually worked because he didn't know it wouldn't work. He just tried it. Most things actually work like that. It's not. Many people think that advanced stuff like AI, for example, is probably 100 lab coded people in a war room uh, focusing on trying to solve that problem. That's not how innovation works. We don't actually do that. It's mostly people that do not accept limits trying to push limits. I think that's and everybody has to start somewhere in your own limitations, in your own learning process, and the prejudices of, oh, I can't do that, I don't think it's a good value for my time, it's going to be a waste of my time, I'm not going to be able to achieve that. And every time you start thinking about that, you're not pushing your limits. You're not practicing pushing that limit. And that's how you become obsolete fast instead of actually learning. The learning process, and that's another thing that I've been explaining in my channel, because it's not obvious, is that people think that learning is receiving a checklist of stuff and reading through that stuff
Mm-hmm.
step by step, and that is learning, and that is far from learning. Learning is learning how to solve problems. Learning how to learn is to actually problem solving. If you don't know how to tackle a problem that you never saw before, that was not documented anywhere, how do you tackle a problem that you never saw before? It's not opening a book, it's not going step by step through some tutorial. You have to analyze that problem, you have to see the boundaries, you have to experiment, to hypotheses to see if it works or not, and go gradually step by step. Eventually you solve that problem, and that's learning.
Awesome. So we're kind of getting toward the end of our time, but um, going back to the YouTube channel. So did you just start putting content out and then people kind of found you, or did you promote it in some way? And how many people
Sure.
did you have following along when you finally stopped making the content?
Yeah, so I was very late in the YouTube game, so there were already many software development focused channels or technology focused channels. So I was trying to figure out something that was different from most of them. So I was not going to do product reviews, I was not going to do easy tutorials, because many channels were actually basically going to the website, getting started tutorial and making a 10-minute video with the step-by-step stuff. Then that's not valuable, that's not interesting because anyone can Google the original source and just go there. So I wanted to do a more in-depth analysis of the computer science stuff. And I didn't know exactly how to do that, but I had in my mind that if I could reach, I don't know, 10,000 subscribers in 1 year, that would be my all-time goal, because I didn't
Hmm.
know it was I was starting from zero. I was able to reach the 100,000 in the first 2 years. So the silver plate came very early actually, and the I didn't try to follow anything that most people would say. So I was asking people and they would say, "Oh, do short videos, do easy to digest videos with step-by-step stuff." All of those best practices that most people would repeat 5 years ago. I was hearing that and disagreeing and saying, "I don't like that format. I don't like easy to digest videos. I actually want one video that tells me everything that is to know about that subject. So I don't want to see a playlist with parts 1 through 10 and have to see introductions, 5 minute long introductions and advertising or whatever. I just want something that's very no nonsense, not waste my time, very dense. And that's what I did. And by doing that, I didn't know that many people actually wanted something like that. So 5 years ago, I say I'm gonna do a 1 hour video with no interruptions, edited out in a way that feels like I'm not even briefing. People say that most people on YouTube, they say that they play videos on 2x speed. My
Hmm.
videos, they say they play in half the speed because otherwise they can't understand what I'm saying. And the
Right.
whole idea was to be the most comprehensive kinds of videos about a certain subject. And I have all the scripts are on my blog, the akitaonrails.com blog. It has the video and the transcript if someone wants to
Mm.
read it through, especially if there's code. I think it's better. Uh, so I wasn't making it for sponsorship or for the clicks. And even then I was able now, 5 years later, I had in my mind that I wanted to end the my run in around 5 years. I didn't want to do a 10-year career out of YouTube, especially because it was not it's not my primary uh, means of I don't get any
Right.
money from that. So it was not for the money. It was primarily to dump my brain into video format, and have like how would I explain all my knowledge and experience about databases, or about how to
Hmm.
optimize uh, code, or how machine low level coding works, or how cryptography works. And I did one single video, at most two videos, for all of those subjects. And I think there's a point, because my career is finite, that I would reach some corpus that makes me satisfied about it. So 5 years later, my channel now has 420,000 subscribers, which I
Oh,
think
wow.
it was good. But better than that, there are many channels, even here in Brazil, that has 600,000, maybe a million. But what is most important is the number of views in the videos themselves.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you have a million subscribers, but each of your videos has just like 5,000 views or 10,000 views. So my videos I was keeping the 50,000 to 100,000 views per video as well, which I think is a good ratio for the number of subscribers. So I know that people were actually watching it and not just browsing through. So I think I started with short-ish videos, 15 to 20 minutes, which is not short at all. I think when people say short, I think they think 10 minutes or less. For me, short was 20 to 30 minutes. And then
Hmm.
my normal videos would be 1 hour, and my longer videos would be an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes.
Oh, wow. Crazy. Well, we're kind of at the end of our time. But if people want to connect with you or see what you're doing these days, where do they find
Yeah.
you?
So there's my blog, akitonrails.com. I'm still gonna post there, even though my
Mm-hmm.
channel is paused for the time being. Maybe I come back and do more videos, but I think the goal of having a video collection of my knowledge and experience in computer science, I think it's largely complete. Then I'm mostly on X, Twitter. So Akira on Rails on Twitter, Akira on Rails on Instagram, Akira on Rails on LinkedIn. So I'm usually posting new stuff. I'm currently discussing about the new AI stuff. For example, people keep asking me, "Oh, is AI going to replace my job?" And I have to explain to them what AI actually is and whatnot, and that keeps me occupied for some time.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and roll us into the picks. You've been on the show before, so you know the drill there. I'm going to start us off with picks. The first thing that I'm going to pick is a card game. So I always start with a board game. So I'm going to do a card game this time. It's called For Sale. It came out in 1997. It's a fast game. Board Game Geek says it takes 30 minutes. It doesn't take 30 minutes to play the game. Might take you 30 minutes the first time while you figure it out. And even then, I doubt it. Has a board game weight of 1.25 out of 5. So, really, really simple game. And essentially, what you do is you start out with a certain amount of money and you bid on different houses, right? So you have the lowest level house, which is level 1, and that's a cardboard box in an alley, right? And then it goes all the way up to 30, and 30 is a space station, right? As a house. So, pretty broad range there, right? And so you're buying these houses, and then what you do is in the next round, the payments, the checks come out, right? And so you pull out the number of checks per, number of players, and then you blind bid your house. So, if the highest is 15,000, right? So if 15,000 comes out, you're probably dropping your 30 if you have the 30, right? And then you're going to try and figure out, okay, well, he has the 30 and she has the 29. I have the 28. So if I put the 28 down to try and get the 15,000, because the next one's a 5,000 and then the bottom one's a 2,000, I'm probably going to wind up with the 5,000 or 2,000. So instead of using my really high one, maybe I'll drop a 17 and see if I can get the 5,000, right? Because you get them in order of your value of your house. So anyway, fun game. Whoever has the most money at the end wins. I mean, that's the whole game. The artwork's fun. Yeah, really have enjoyed that. So, and it's a quickie one that I played with my buddies a bunch. I played it for the first time at SaltCon, which is local board game conference. So anyway, fun stuff there. I'm just trying to think through what else things have been nuts because I'm involved politically here in Utah and been pretty involved in the whole process of getting people nominated and stuff like
Oh
that.
wow!
So anyway, I encourage people to get involved in the political process. I'm not going to cast any judgment on either. If you believe one way, go get involved, right? If you believe different from me, go get involved. It's just anyway, it's a really fascinating way of getting into that. One thing that I have been using to reach out to delegates in the process here in Utah is a SaaS called ClickSend, and I mean it's real simple, but you import the phone numbers and then you can send them messages. So I sent out a message this morning encouraging people to come out for the school board debate tomorrow. That incidentally I'm also the moderator for. So anyway, just fun stuff like that the party's putting on because I'm a party officer. And so I guess that's the other big thing that I'm into right now. How about you, Fabio? What do you have? What do you want to pick?
It can be any subject.
Anything. Yep.
Okay, so as I said, I think nowadays what has been fascinating me the most is the reaction. Apart from all the political stuff, I try to see what people are doing, but I'm not as
Hmm.
active because, especially here in Brazil, it's very very polarized, and whatever you say, people are just going to try to
It
cancel
is
you
here too.
either way.
It is here too, and
So
that's why I didn't mention any parties or any movements that I'm a
yeah.
part of, because it's not really relevant to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and again, as always, I try to be as welcome as possible to people
Yeah.
to from any side. Usually, I'm trying to discuss technology and stuff like that through the social networks because I think it's first it's easier because it's technical. Uh, I think we can have fun discussions and useful ones, especially we were discussing. People are trying to figure out what's the best tool, what's not, and in terms of my picks. I've been, I've been, people have been very insecure. They dread the next generation of AI stuff. Some people really think they're the devil. They're gonna
Hmm.
replace my job, whatever. But what I try to say to people is instead of being afraid or trying to give up your career because you think you're going to be replaced, try to, I think instead of waiting for the tool to dominate you, I think you should be first to dominate the tool. So I
Right.
think you should learn as much as possible on how can you make your life easier using tools like that. So my picks would be tools such as the GitHub Copilot. If you're a programmer, it's actually really useful. It's autocomplete on steroids. So you don't
Hmm.
want to be expecting the AI to do the entire code for you. It's not going to happen. But for the boring part, oh, let's refactor this big ass CSS file that's so boring to do. So that's the kind of stuff that maybe the Copilot thing can be very very useful and actually save you a lot of time, especially for example, if testing people, one of the justifications for people not to do testing is because it's boring. Oh, it's boring code, it's not fun to do. And the Copilot thing is very very good to understand your code and suggest unit tests for your code as well. So I think for programmers they should try that. And the chat gpt, claude, gemini, things that are already available online. Again, it's not supposed to be a replacement for anyone, but it's actually a very good tool to summarize stuff. So let's say you are overwhelmed without knowing where to start learning Ruby on Rails, for example, because there's so many different topics that you want. So there's active storage, that's active channel, that's how do I manage database, what a migration is. So there's lots of documentation that you can try. You may find that overwhelming, and you will find that tools like ChatGPT can help give you an overview and explain certain topics in an easier way that you can digest faster, and that can actually speed you up in the learning process. So I think those new crop of tools can be kind of like your personal assistants in helping you in where you're overwhelmed or where you find it boring, to help you get that productivity back and learn faster.
Hmm. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for coming, Fabio.
Yeah, thank you, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Yep, absolutely. All right, folks, we're going to wrap it here. And until next time, Max out.
See ya.
Hang on for a second.